All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jomo Stewart and Miss Katie Yarrow here at the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. It is Tuesday, October 10th, just after 8 a.m., and we are here for the latest Energy for All Alaska Task Force. Our guest is Mr. Kevin Torpy, Vice President for Operations for Graphite One Alaska, here to give us a presentation relative to their project in Graphite Creek, which was recently in the news, big in the news. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Mr. Torpy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Jomo. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Torpy. I'm Vice President of Operations for Graphite One here in Alaska. I was joined by our Senior Vice President of Mining, Mike Schaffner. I can't tell if he's still on or not. Perhaps not. Anyway, I was asked to give an update on our project following a core CM meeting up at UAF a few weeks ago, and happy to do that today. As a bit of a lag here as I go through the presentation, I might make some forward-looking statements. Give you a quick overview of the company as a whole and sort of what our goals are. Fill you in a little bit specifically about the Graphite Creek project and our activities this summer north of Nome. I'll touch on our plans for a secondary treatment plant in the lower 48, and then some of the more newsworthy information around the technology investment agreement that we received this summer from the Department of Defense.
Right. And as we begin, I'll just remind everyone, unfortunately, I'm having trouble watching the chat box still. So if you have any questions, I do have the presenter view up. You can go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, again, everybody knows the drill. If you have a question, just feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself, ask for acknowledgement, and fire away. All right. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Jomo. So Graphite One Alaska is a subsidiary of Graphite One Inc. It's a Vancouver-based company. The Graphite Creek project is currently its sole asset and sole focus of the company. The goal of the company is to develop a 100% domestic supply of graphite to create battery anodes for electric vehicles. The raw materials for that will be mined out on the Seward Peninsula at our Graphite Creek project, which is the largest natural freight graphite deposit in the US, likely in North America. And the current intent is that we would construct and operate a secondary treatment facility somewhere in Washington State, location yet to be determined, where we would turn the natural graphite concentrate supplied by the Graphite Creek project and artificial graphite from materials from other sources into various graphite forms, primarily to create anodes for electric car batteries. As we go into a future with some likely aspirational goals around how many electric vehicles we're putting on the road in the future, there's some statistics there that are a bit shocking and really speak to the need for more graphite, not just globally, but certainly as a domestic product to reduce our reliance on China. Graphite Creek project is located out on the Seward Peninsula. We're about 38 miles north of Nome. We can get about 30 miles there by road, and then from there we're a fly-in operation. Our state mining claims that you can see highlighted in orange there are sort of on the northern edge of the Kigliak Mountains and on the southern shore of the Emmerich Basin. We sort of operate out of two main facilities there and then an auxiliary staging area. What you see here is our camp at Graphite Creek. This is a 60-person tent camp. That's primary focus is to support our drilling activities. All our helicopter support during the summer is based there. And then we're also doing quite a bit of environmental baseline monitoring in various areas that I'll touch on shortly.
If I may, first question. Are there, does anyone live in that immediate area? Are there any towns or villages nearby, like say on that lake?
Let me get a laser pointer up. So we have Nome down here. There's the village of Teller up here, and the villages of Brevig Mission are the closest areas of population. The village of Mary's Igloo, which is no longer inhabited but still has a tribal presence in the region, is sort of located out in this area. But other than that, no populated areas at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Quite a bit of subsistence activity on the Emmerich Basin, and then as well as through the Tuxuck Channel that connects it out to Port Clarence and the Bering Sea.
So say on a seasonal basis.
Definitely seasonal subsistence activities, yes. But there's a few allotments on the Tuxuck Channel, which is right here. But that's the closest that I'm aware of that folks are residing at all.
And that's not really navigable, or say not large scale navigable.
The Tuxuck Channel is quite deep, and you can certainly bring barges in there. There've been barges there in the past to support other activities. The Emmerich Basin itself is quite shallow, so you're limited by draft, I would say, more than anything when operating in there.
Thank you.
Yep. Once we drill the core, we're flying it out to the Cougar Rock Highway and then trucking it into Nome, where we have a 24-person camp sort of on the northern edge of Nome at Satellite Field. For those of you that are familiar with the area, we have core logging activities where the geologists are documenting and interpreting the core here. And then in this old tin building here, we have core cutting, where we're cutting the core in half, and half of that sample is preserved for future reference, and half is prepared also in this building. It's crushed, pulverized, and split down to a small sample that we can send to the assay lab, rather than shipping large bags of core for them to prep on site. So save quite a bit in freight doing that. And then we have a 24-person camp you can see there in the background, where we host the non-local employees that are working there. Additionally, at mile 27 of the Cougar Rock Highway, which you can see here, we seasonally operate a staging area at mile 27, where we shuttle our freight back and forth, saving quite a bit of money on helicopters being able to truck out to that area. From there, it's about an 18-mile flight in by helicopter. And then just north of here, we have a fuel staging area where we do the same with our Jet A and diesel products. The project itself is not really a new discovery. There's been, minor work, in the early 1900s, and then a little bit of more efforts in the 1980s on a sampling program by Anaconda Company. Between then and 2011, not much happening up there, but a mapping and sampling program under Graphite One in 2011, followed by the first drilling program in 2012. Also, really important that this airborne geophysics was flown and discovered this 18-kilometer anomaly that later discovered hosts the project. Subsequent to that, there was between 2013 and 2021 a number of drilling programs, some bigger than others, but 2021 was the first time a camp was established at Graphite Creek. You can see that in the photo, 24-person camp at the time, and also the pre-feasibility study was initiated. The ore body is hosted in these mountains, somewhat obscured by the clouds up here, but sort of in that general area is the drilled off deposit that's the subject of the pre-feasibility study. The results of that study were published in an NI 43-101 report in 2022. The project contemplated an open pit mining operation with pretty conventional crushing, grinding, and flotation. Graphite floats quite easily. The study was done at 2,800 tons per day, resulting in a 2.2 stripping ratio, and co-disposal of waste rock with dry stack tailings was the chosen disposal method. That requires approximately an 18-mile access road from the Cougar Highway, not far from that staging area I showed you, and resulted in a 22-year mine life. It also assumed the concentrated being barged from Nome to Washington during the summer months when the Bering Sea was ice-free, and also had the secondary treatment and anode manufacturing facility.
Hey, Kevin, it looks like we do have a question from Miss Peace.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're on mute, Marianne.
If you could just stay on this slide for 1 second, I would appreciate it if you went back to where it says here, concentrated barge from Nome. The concentrate is barged from Nome to Washington. Also, on a previous slide, you talked about kind of the operation that was going to be done in Washington State using hydropower. What is the reason for us not having the full value chain here in Alaska? And why are you folks sending it out rather than processing it? Is it an issue with our energy resources, or can you expand on that a little?
If you'll bear with me, I will address that specifically later on in the presentation.
You're awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, I try. Right on. Anything else on this one?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So that pre-feasibility study was based on a 32.5 million ton graphite resource, 5.25% average graphite grade, resulting in about 1.7 million tons of contained graphite. After the engineers have their way with it and the economics are put in, that resulted in a open pit of about 22.5 million tons at 5.6% graphite.
Actually, I think I do have a question. Often with mines, there's a toxicity question, either because of the materials themselves that you're bringing up or the way it's processed on site, say arsenic with gold. Do we have that kind of concern with this?
The
really
primary concern would be acid generating potential of the waste rock and then tailings over the life of the mine. So that certainly is something that's going to have to be managed and treated. But beyond that, the reagents that are used in the process are fairly benign. It's essentially a diesel and a detergent is what's used in the mill. The graphite floats quite readily, so no exotic chemicals really are required for that. So it's really just managing the acid generating potential of the facility
and the rock itself. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So here you can see the resulting economics of that study, and it's a little bit deceiving in that really the economics are really coming from the secondary treatment plant, and the mine at 2,800 tons per day was not really all that economically robust. So recognizing that we need to stay competitive globally, and in particularly against China, who can manipulate the market to achieve very low operating costs, we want to be able to stand up to those actions as much as possible. So we recognize that we really needed to upsize the operation in order to lower our operating costs. So following that study and somewhat subsequent to it, or in parallel with it, there was another drilling program going on in the summer of 2002, a little over 1,900 meters of core and in 16 holes. We also expanded the capacity of the camp, but really importantly, you can see on this long electromagnetic trend The defined pit for the study is just this little portion here. So a number of holes were stepped out to demonstrate continuity of that deposit, and we're out as far as 4 kilometers from that pit shell. We're still hitting on graphite. So really promising as to a much longer longevity to the operation.
Sir, for a moment, we had Mr. Rick Soley's hand up and camera on. Rick, do you have a question?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't help myself when you were going through the grades and the economics. As a gold miner wannabe, those are impressive numbers, but I decided I really didn't need to ask the question. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. If you do end up having one, sir, please do.
I probably will a little later. Thanks.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Mr. Torpy.
So with the results of that 22 program, we did redid the mineral resource, not the reserve, but the resource on the project. And just with a few holes, we were able to increase that resource by about 15%, helping it up to about 37.6 million tons. So demonstrating that it's doesn't take a terrible amount of drill holes to really increase the life of the mine. So what's next? We recognize that 2,800 tons per day is a respectable underground production rate, not really where you want to be when you have a remote open pit project in Alaska. It's dependent on low operating costs. So really, our goal right now, as we go into working on a feasibility study, is to increase the resource and reserve such to support a 10,000 ton per day mill, which is sort of on the scale of a Red Dog size operation, and still maintain that 22-year mine life in front of us. So that's what we've been up to this summer, is really hitting that hard, doing infill drilling in the known pit to upgrade resources from indicated into measured and indicated there, so that we can account for it in a mine plan, and then also stepping out to expand the footprint of that mine as well. So to achieve that, this year we put in a short-lived winter trail to mobilize some heavy equipment. This allowed us to build some roads across the face of the hill there to reduce our reliance on helicopters, not only from a cost standpoint, but from a weather standpoint. It's pretty challenging weather up there all year round, and many days where we can't fly for a portion of the day, either due to fog or high winds. So getting these roads in has really helped the project out this year, increasing our efficiency. We contracted with Major Drilling to come in. They had 2 drills that you can see there in the foreground, the one the lower end of the hill there, road accessed, and then the one here in the foreground, helicopter flown rig on that pad. And then we added a 3rd drill in early August, and happy to say we've just are now wrapping up demobilization from camp. There's just a few people left buttoning things up, but we were able to drill just under 29,000 feet of drilling in 57 holes this year. We also did a campaign along the proposed access route where we were testing material sites, and that was about a month-long program, and went very well. Also did quite a bit of environmental baseline monitoring, sort of the normal stuff that any mine does. A little bit unique for us is this Imuric Basin, and trying to understand the bathymetry of that, and also the water quality. It's a brackish water body, so not really fresh water, not really salt water. So we're trying to get our heads around that and understand what that means to the project, and how we can minimize our impacts on it. Also doing quite a bit of community outreach. The company's been holding community meetings since 2014. Emphasis on the 3 villages, the 2 villages in the city of Nome that I highlighted earlier. Brevik Mission, Teller, and Nome. And then a subsistence advisory council was established in 2018, focused on Brevik Mission, Teller, and Mary's Igloo. This year we expanded that to include members from Bering Straits Native Corp, Nome Eskimo Community, King Island Tribal Council. And this year, for the first time, the company is doing direct hire of locals. In the past, pretty much all work up there has been contracted. So really putting into quite a bit of effort into local hiring this year. And then we're also working with local resources to develop a long-term workforce development. The secondary treatment plant, as mentioned, will produce a concentrate at Graphite Creek that will be dried and containerized and stockpiled in Nome and at site until the sea ice is gone, and then there'll be barging campaigns to get that material down to Washington State. Still working on the final location of that, but the real emphasis is on the lower cost hydroelectric power. And at that plant, we'll produce a number of graphite products, the higher grade materials going to lithium ion batteries. There'll be 4 anode products from that. There'll be a purified graphite products that go into sort of conventional non-lithium ion batteries, and then unpurified graphite products that go into other markets such as refractory and lubricants and other sort of industrial ingredients. So getting to the question is, why Washington State? I think first and foremost, it's a lower cost, more abundant hydroelectric power. The process is quite energy intensive. You can see there the intent is to build that plant out in 2 stages. And bear in mind, these are the numbers to support the plant being fed by a 2,800 ton per day mine, not the 10,000 ton per day. So these numbers are going to go up with as we get through the feasibility study. So at 86 megs connected during phase 1, 54 and change peak load. As we get into phase 2, we're sort of 110 megs, 66.5 peak. It's also the lower carbon footprint of the hydroelectric power, we believe, will be more attractive to investors that are looking to get into the sector. And it also provides better access to ports for not only our incoming concentrate, but other materials that are used in the process. And then also provides access to transportation systems, so we can get these anodes to the car manufacturers. And sort of not listed there is also there's likely to be a component of battery recycling. So having that transportation system to get those recycled batteries into the plant is key for us.
All right, could we pause here? Mary Ann?
Yes, I wanted to do a follow-up on that. Very interesting, of course, with the hydropower and the cost of low energy. Have you folks thought of or looked at the clean energy alternative of micronuclear and how that could benefit both the community and lead to keeping the in-state processing here in Alaska rather than having to ship it out?
We are very interested as we watch that.
Your question on China. You could.
Sorry, let me hit the first one before we get on to China. But you're very interested in, as we watch that micronuclear develop, really anxious to see how that comes as it's installed in Fairbanks. We're also watching a potential thermal hydro project out in the area as well. So we definitely have our eyes on that. We are not banking on it for our feasibility studies that those things are fully in and viable by the time we need them there, but certainly would be very interested as the technology proves up.
And I guess that's part of again, it looks like there's a whole host of reasons here. So you mentioned that, again, these numbers, as far as the power requirement, are based on the pre-feasibility number of 2,800.
Yes.
So those are going to go up considerably,
Indeed.
correct?
Yes.
But again, then the transportation component.
Yeah, it is, pretty important that we're tied into, the downstream customer being the battery and auto manufacturers. So getting to that's part of it. Now it's not something that couldn't be overcome up here, but cost wise, I don't know that pans out.
Mr. Donnelly, is that Michael Donnelly?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. I might say that I think the presentation so far has been very good. And also to note that I'm a colleague of Marianne Pease. We've been working in Alaska natural resources since the 1970s. I was impressed with, just a quick comment, I was impressed with the grade issues, the cutoff issues that are being used, which are really the drivers for tolerance of cost, especially the transportation cost. But my real focus is on questions relating to the price of the output and the demand for it. The two are really tied to the issues of China. And I have watched for many, many years China's response to new incremental production that they largely control both the feedstock as well as the manufacturing output. The question on China in particular that has, for the last 10 years, probably longer, I have watched China both increase the price for these products, including graphite, but largely rare earths, but including all our critical minerals for our EV industry. And where the damage has been done more greatly than price increases is China's ability and willingness to drop the price to prevent new incremental production. And they've done that very recently on a number of commodities. So the question I have, and maybe it's a premature one, in spite given the level of your current information, have you folks looked at some kind of guaranteed offtake, both tonnage and price, during the current projected economic life, say 10, 20 years? It seems to me that financing, whether equity or debt, is going to be very concerned about China's ability to manipulate price, including lowering the price to prevent economic success or financing of your project. Have you given that? I'm sure you have. But it's a question I'd like to ask. Thank you.
Well, we're certainly very aware of what China can and does do in the market. There's no question of that. As far as a guaranteed offtake, we're not there yet. Certainly discussions with the auto manufacturers on their needs and desires, but no agreements in place as of yet.
Certainly, I've gotten every indication, although it's not being borne out with financial resources made available at scale, but there appears to be a recognition on the part of the feds of the reality of the marketplace and what will need to be done to allow folks to compete with China. It's understood what they do and can do
And have done.
and have done.
And are doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a challenge, and it's going to take probably more than just our project. And we've seen support for developing these supply chains through the Department of Defense contracts that we currently have, and I'll touch on here shortly. So there seems to be a recognition at the federal level of the issue and how far we are behind in production of these and how reliant we are on China. I think needs to be more done in the future as we will move forward, but I think it's at least on people's radar.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Torpy, on an earlier slide, You mentioned geotech and sampling relative to an access road, and I just wasn't sure if that was just relative to the mine site itself, or from the road to Nome.
The back up here to the beginning where I have a map.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, this one will do. So there's 3 roads that come out of Nome. There's the Nome Teller Highway, there's the Cougar Rock Road that comes up north, and then the Council Road. We operate our staging facility at mile 28 of the Cougar Rock Road. The pre-feasibility contemplates, we've looked at a number of different routes, but the one we think is the most viable starts at about here at mile 30 of the Cougar Rock Road. And then it's about 18 miles through Mosquito Pass down the Cobblestone Valley drainage into site. So when I talk about the access road, it's that 18 miles coming off the existing Cougar Rock. Now, the Cougar Rock itself is only seasonally maintained and will need quite a bit of work to make it trafficable for concentrate haulage. But that road I refer to is the 18 miles from the Cougar Rock into site.
Ah, okay. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, well, as we zip forward, I'll just again remind everyone, thank you very much. You're already doing it. But these presentations, as always, are for us and you. So if you have any questions or comments, please do throw up your hand. We'll get you acknowledged and you can get that question asked. Thanks.
Any more questions on this slide before we move on? Okay.
So it sounds like, again, for now, the economics are best with export, but it gives something for us Alaskans to think about as we move forward about the things that we might do to make our own state and localities more attractive to the value added. We just had a presentation a couple weeks ago relative to Iceland and the fact that you have folks shipping bauxite all the way from Australia. Just because the price of the long-term assured price of energy is so low, and it's green to boot. So there are opportunities there.
Yeah, bauxite's another super energy intensive one. So sort of moving on and touching on the fact that the federal government is has its head around the issue with regards to being competitive against China. We were awarded a $37.5 million technology investment agreement under the Defense Production Act, which was funded through the Inflation Reduction Act, and with the goal of helping us to pay for 50% of our getting us up through a feasibility study, which is due next year. So it's not we haven't been written a $37.5 million check. We will get reimbursed as we spend the money. So we have to raise it first, which given the manipulative market conditions by China has proved to be a bit of a challenge. But so far we've been able to complete everything that we had lined up for this year out at site. We had a tremendous amount of support in getting that through from our entire state and federal delegation, but really can't say enough good things about the pressure that Senator Murkowski applied and the visibility she provided for the project. It was incredibly helpful in getting that TIA over the finish line. In addition to that Department of Defense TIA for our feasibility study, we've also received a $4.7 million contract from the Department of Defense Logistics Agency to explore the use of graphite as a foam fire suppressant. Currently the chemicals that are used for these fire suppression systems on aircraft carriers, submarines, etc., is highly toxic and being phased out. So they're looking to look for alternatives for that. We will be providing, and we've actually excavated a small bulk sample to send off for processing, and then Borbeck Minerals Group will be looking to develop the technology based on our graphite. That concludes my presentations, and I'm happy to take any more questions you might have.
All right, I would open it up to questions. So you mentioned graphite being used. There's a slide for your production outputs, anodes for lithium ion batteries, lower grade for non-lithium ion batteries. Then you will mention lubricants. What are the other things? What do we do with graphite?
And really, the big and the one that people are most common with, I think, is lubricants. Whether it's the graphite dust you squirt in your lock to lubricate it, but all greases of all types have graphite in them as a lubricant, and of course, the batteries of all kinds of conventional and the lithium ion. It's also used in the graphite blocks in nuclear reactors as well. So
also, Kevin, on that, up until 2 years ago, the main use of graphite is for the electrodes in like stoves and water heaters. It's the resistance that gives you the heating elements. And just as of 2 years ago, electric car batteries passed as the #1 consumer of graphite. So at this point, the electric car batteries are taking the lead.
Thanks, Mike.
Neat. So it's a pretty useful bit of material. Again, so it's both the heating element, but you also said refractory material. So that would be more heat shielding.
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. Again, I would open up the floor. Mr. Soley, I knew we'd get one.
Thank you, Jomo. Thanks for the presentation. So I know this deposit is world class. I'm wondering, I missed the slide, or maybe you didn't have it in the presentation that shows some of the other deposits around the globe and how this stands out. Can you talk about that a little bit? And it also hits on that concern over China's ability to impact the market, which is real.
Sure.
But yeah, just talk maybe a little about the global and how impressive this deposit is.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit, and Mike, jump in as you see fit. But the majority, the lion's share of the production is coming out of China, not only of graphite but of the battery manufacturing as well. More recently, there's a company that's processing graphite out of Louisiana using graphite that's mined in Mozambique. They're currently struggling due to price manipulation by the Chinese. And then there's recently been a new mine open up in Quebec that's also looking to come online as well. But beyond that, it's mostly China.
Yeah, so when you look at the size of the resources, the Mozambique is #1 in the world, and they're stating about 1.2 billion tons of graphite at about 10% grade. Then when you look at the others, China's difficult to see into, but what we know is China's average grade runs about 4% graphite, so it's not particularly good graphite. And if you added all of China's up, they would be about #4. With what we have in stated reserves, we would be #9. If you looked at Kevin's graph on there, and this is the forward-looking statement that he warned you about. If you looked at Kevin's graph on there and drilling that, and the fact that we know we've hit graphite in every single hole this summer, we would probably be right in #2 or 3.
Okay.
You're never going to prove it out, because to prove it, you would have to drill it, and you would spend all that money up front, and your return on investment wouldn't be there, because the only reason you'd be drilling it is to prove you're bigger. We have enough graphite to mine for hundreds of years there. And I think that's the key takeaway is when you know you have that much graphite, why are you just going to drill it out to prove you're the biggest? Okay.
Understand. Makes total sense. Thanks very much. appreciate you guys giving us a little talk here in Fairbanks. We ought to do this one at the Fairbanks Miners Breakfast too. That would be fun.
We'd be happy to.
I will forward your contact to our guys. All right. Let's see. I had a further question in my head. Oh, proposed or estimated timeline to when we might have an actual mine up and in operation, if things, if the stars all align.
Sure. So we're sort of looking at finishing off our feasibility study late next year, and assuming economics look good, launch into permitting phase. At that point, sort of NEPA, 2 to 3 years, 3 years likely for that, followed by ignoring any potential lawsuits against said permits. A couple years of production before we're in operation. So, 7 years out.
Okay. And as it stands now, would you all say that you've gotten a pretty good response from the local community relative to this mine?
Relatively, yeah. It's we've put a lot of effort into it for sure. And I think like any project, there's people that are for it, recognize the long-term economic opportunities that the region can provide, and of course there's people that are concerned about what impacts that's going to have on their life, and if either opposed or very cautious at this time. The Subsistence Advisory Committee we've been working with, I think, is been a really good avenue for getting into those communities and demonstrating that we're not there to just tear things up, and we take their lifestyle and their subsistence needs very seriously. And I think as we demonstrate that we will live up to our obligations and our promises that we make up there, that will slowly start to change minds up there. But it's all going to be about demonstrating that we can be good neighbors, and the entire team, top to bottom, is really believes in that, and put our money where our mouth is on that topic.
Appreciate it. I mean, there is always a tension. I mean, you mentioned the communities, the very local communities, but in the environmental community at large, that tension between the understanding that we need to do some things to make that green future possible, but resistance to those things at the same time. Again, that the minerals come from under the earth, but so you're going to have to disturb the earth to get the minerals to make the products that we need, again, for the transition.
Yeah, I would say we haven't really had much direct contact with any of the NGOs there. I mean, it'll be telling as to how far the hypocrisy goes when you have a project like this that can sort of fundamentally change automotive future in the United States. And are they really going to get behind that, or are they going to oppose a mine that's going to help us get there? So we shall see.
Well, clearly, it's even beyond the automotive industry. And I'm looking at my cell phone right now with its lithium-ion battery embedded and needed.
No.
Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Again, we are nearing the top of the hour, but of course, we still have a few more minutes before 9 a.m.
Kevin, can I sneak in another question? This is Victor Ross. You and I know each other from years past. I also serve currently on the Alaska Minerals Commission. So if you had one question or comment to send back to the Minerals Commission on how the state of Alaska could support this project, how would that go?
Well, I think by and large, the state's been very supportive. I think as we look to the future, streamlined permitting, I think, is the number one thing the state can do. We're getting excellent political support, no doubt, but sometimes the processes can be quite slow, and there's lots of reasons for that, as you know. But anything we can do to maintain efficiency in our permitting processes is good in our books.
And do you have federal land involved in any of the land status with the 18 miles of the access road, or is that all state or native land?
I believe that is all state. Or state. There might be some
state land, Kevin.
BLM.
It is actually all state land.
Okay, so state land, both for the road as well as the mine site itself.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. We actually have to swing out about 100 yards to miss BLM land, but we'll keep it all on state land.
Yeah, we believe that the Corps of Engineers would be the lead agency on this to do the wetlands impacts.
Mr. Donnelly, I saw that you were flicking yourself off of mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up on a related subject, but the comment just about what the state of Alaska can continue to supply support to this project. It kind of goes back to my original fundamental economics, is that demand really drives supply. And the state and the federal government have shared equity and debt or investment supply capital to the potential seller. The supplier is the seller, and this subsurface risk seems to be well supported regulatorily, government support. It goes back to my original question of concern about demand or market risk, the pricing manipulation in the non-competitive market of these products, globally speaking. Has the company looked at demand subsidy, which is very abundant for other parts of the green technology effort? In other words, has a buyer, federal or private, step forward early? This may be too early, and I recognize this, but you're obviously using a price in your economic preliminary economics. So it would seem to me that maybe the next effort of regulatory support or market support would be demand assistance, either buyers and guaranteeing some kind of price.
Yeah, Mike, jump in if I get sideways on this one, but to my knowledge, we have not done that. The project's a little bit unique from many mines in that our product at the end of the day is these purified graphite products. So you can imagine if it was a zinc mine, we're building the mine and the smelter at the same time, and really trying to produce a finished product rather than a concentrate. And the ultimate buyer of our products is these the battery manufacturers and automotive companies. So although there's been discussions with them, I don't think that we're certainly not at a stage where there's any agreements in place on any of that, and nor with the federal or state government.
So
Yeah,
I'll step in.
You're spot on, Kevin. Essentially, what we've got, we've obviously spoken and are in negotiations with all of the large car dealers, and your concerns about the manipulation of the market are correct, which is really why we've set up our development strategy to accommodate that. If you look at the mine that Kevin was speaking about in Louisiana, or you should say the Cirrus, the company where they've got the mine in Mozambique and the development of the anode facility in Louisiana, China came in this year and dropped the price of graphite 25%. And the only place to sell graphite currently is China, because they're making 96% of the car anodes. And it doesn't matter whether they're stamped from Japan or wherever, they're all sourced from China. So when They came in with a strategy of opening the mine and then selling graphite and then developing an anode facility afterwards. They allowed themselves to be punished because they've literally, their stock price is down about 60 to 80% from where they were 5 years ago, because they haven't been able to put the graphite supply out on the market. Now, if you look at the market fundamentals, they say that exact same things that's going to happen to graphite that did to lithium here 4 years ago, because China did the same thing. They kept people from competing by dropping the price, but then you hit a point where they can't supply the market. And that's projected to happen in about 2025 right now. Now, what's China doing to beat that? And this is where it's a little different than lithium. A car battery actually is made of natural and artificial graphite. And right now, China is building a bunch of artificial graphite plants to compete with the natural graphite. The problem is the artificial graphite develops almost as much CO2 as using a car on regular gas. So it's not really helping the environment, and they're willing to put it out at a lower price. So your concerns are very valid. I think at some point in there, and they're in fact in place with this $7,500 rebate for buying a car that's made with America. All of the incentives they put in place, they're going to be very well needed, because we know that China's not going to come to the table on a level playing field. So your concerns are right, and everything you said is correct, and we're developing it just the opposite. We're actually going to start our finishing plant first, buy the cheap graphite from China until we consume the supply. Once we consume the supply and the price goes up, we're going to supply it from our mine, so they can't beat us on the other side of the equation. And that's the strategy that we've got in place to deal with that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And of course, it's the feedstock price, it's the buyer equation that you obviously are focused on. And it's probably a little early, but in a way, maybe not too early, because all the economics you run has to have some range, some Annie has, yeah, I'm sorry, am I back with you? Has to have some range of pricing in it, but again, if China elects to sell you graphite expensively, then you're kind of in the feedstock issue without a good price to buy your product, your finished product.
So, Mr. Donnelly, if I may, you're asking the right question and making the accurate observation, but I'm afraid you're asking it and telling it to the wrong folks. This is something actually we need to work out as a society and as a government. The fact that we're competing with an entity that has already stepped up to bend economics. That's how China captured these markets, and then is using its market power to maintain its position. And it's the private sector has a role to play, but frankly, I believe our governments are going to have a role to play as well if we are going to readjust the market. But that's my 2 cents.
I agree with that. It's a government support on the demand end of the equation, not necessarily, but to continue the supply support, subsidies or incentives, but to now look at the market, the buy end of that equation. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's really how it worked. I mean, the Chinese both recognize an opportunity, but a vulnerability of our capitalist systems, and that's that it chases lowest price. And over the span of a generation, they displaced us as the leaders in these multiple markets and exploited that vulnerability, and they exploit it still today, and will continue to do so if we allow it. All right. Well, hey, everybody, we are at the top of the hour. I would open the floor to a final question or two in the last minute or two we have. Does anyone have one or some? All right. Well, in that case, the chat was just Mr. Kelly saying goodbye. Well, all right, Mr. Torpy, friends at Graphite One, Mr. Schaffner, thank you so much for this presentation. Again, I read about it in the news, we'd heard about it, saw the presentation at the Core CM meeting, and so thank you very much for giving us the update. We will be circling back around if you'll be willing, because we'd love to know about the progress of this project, but also we'd want to know if there's anything we can do to help. So please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you all, and yeah, appreciate your support. Happy to have joined you today.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I don't have anything nailed down for next week, but I'll keep chugging along. Actually, I was going to reach out to our friends over at the Geologic Survey. We haven't had our update from them in a little while, and I figured it'd be a nice follow on, but I'll keep you guys informed, and I'll send out the notices. Well, beyond that, again, thanks everybody for coming. Again, thank you very much, our friends at Graphite One. Have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon at the Energy for All Alaska Task Force.
Okay.
Thanks, Jomo.
You're welcome.